Specifically meant our screen.
Yes, our screen. You guys, so many screens and so many people, and so many movies in the world. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the spoiler room. Here we are once again at a pre-code film. It is rated PC for pre-code special that we're doing. We're winding down. We're at the halfway mark. We've just gone over the halfway mark. So we've only got 5 actual specials to go, and then I got to come up with another one before then, and I'm still trying to work on some ideas, so I'm always open to suggestions, folks. But what's not a suggestion tonight is that we're covering Murders in the Zoo from 1933, and I have a wonderful panel of crew members with me tonight to discuss this film and get into all kinds of spoilers. So thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and popping your favorite drink or other beverage with us. So first off, he is with us once again, my right-hand man. He keeps coming back. It is none other than Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
So glad to have you here. Hopefully the film isn't what left your hair in a bit of, wild craziness. But so happy to have you here, and also happy to have Mr. Joe Randazzo back with us. Hello, Joe.
I'm really happy to be here for this one. I've been looking forward to this one.
I was going to say,
the wheel landed on it. I was like, okay, we got to talk about this one.
You've been talking about you've been talking this one up for a little while, so I know you're excited to talk about it. So you'll be the perfect person to do the synopsis for Murders in the Zoo. So please.
Now, normally I would pull my DVD and Blu-ray out to read the synopsis off the back, but neither one has a synopsis because they're both box sets and don't have any descriptions.
Fair enough.
This one. Man, first time I saw it was in the 90s. I had heard about it because it was on the beginning of the old Universal monster tapes. Like there was the Universal Horror Collection. Murders in the Zoo was one of them. So one night I saw that it was going to be on the Sci-Fi Channel like really late at night. So I set a VCR to record it. And this is like sometime like 96, 97. And that first and last kill from this movie have stayed with me because I didn't know anything about what pre-code was. I always, most of the movies that I'd seen, most of the older movies that I'd seen, Dracula, Frankenstein, that stuff, they're not like as violent as this. Mm-hmm. Like there are moments in them, and and most of the other stuff that I'd seen like the Marx Brothers, I'd seen like, your Humphrey Bogart, your James Cagney movies. None of them had like this level of like sadistic violence. 1932 movie. So it opens in French Indochina, which is now Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam, or areas of it, where Lionel Atwell is sewing something. And you hear him say he's never going to lie to a friend again or kiss his friend's woman or kiss his friend's wife again. Yes. So now you already know what he's done because like you could kind of put 2 and 2 together, but it's still jarring to see in a 1932 movie. This man is tied up, his hands tied behind his back, and then when he stands up and faces the camera, his mouth has been sewn completely shut, and he's being left for dead in the jungle, which is horrifying because he cannot call for help, he cannot get himself loose. Wow. It ends there, but you pretty much figure this guy's probably not going to be around for too long into the movie. So Lionel Atwell is with his very attractive wife, and he gets the wallet, I think. Something that belongs to
a belt. It's a belt.
The belt. It was the belt buckle. The belt buckle.
The engraved letter, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, well, he's dead, eaten by tigers. And tries to act like he knew nothing about it. The wife is not too sure. She's been sneaking around with somebody on the island. So that's another thing pre-code where, someone who's not the villain of the movie is sneaking around and having extramarital affairs. And we're supposed to feel sympathy towards her, which would be a no-no 2 years later.
Yes.
So yeah, she basically lets it out that I think my husband probably had this guy killed. When they go back home with all the animals that Lionel Atwell has captured for the zoo, she's having an affair. The guy she met on the island that she's having an affair with, she's planning on leaving Lionel Atwell and going with him. And Atwell is told by the
news reporter.
Yeah, the news reporter, Peter Yates, which is a great name considering, it ended up being the name of the guy who directed Bullet and Breaking Away and all that stuff. He lets it slip that there's another man in the apartment with her. So Lionel Atwell decides he's going to kill him, and he kills him by making it look like the green mamba has struck him with its venomous fangs and killed him. We goes from there. We find out it's not actually the green mamba. Everyone's like, wait, did you sneak another snake back from the island? And no, he just has a little.
It becomes a murder mystery, yeah.
And I mean, not much of a mystery. We
know but
behind it. It's a mystery to them. It's not a mystery to the audience.
Well, yeah, but it's a mystery of what he exactly used until he reveals it. How he managed to get it happening. Yeah. But the audience sees it, but you're like the audience telling the characters, hey, he's bad. So.
This movie, 15-year-old me didn't know movies like this existed in the 30s. So this is, I mean, even though I'd seen Frankenstein and Dracula and that stuff, I kind of consider this to be kind of my awakening to, pre-code horror.
Well, this
the way that the mamba wraps itself around Lionel Atwell at the end, and he manages to contort his face in just the right way so that it looks like it's like crushing and ripping his skull apart. Man. So this is one of those times. I don't know if it's nostalgia on my part or if it's actually like you guys might shit all over it, or you guys might be like, oh my God, this is actually great. So looking forward to hearing what you guys think of it.
Well, let's find out. Ian, this your first view?
Well, I noticed in your synopsis, Joe, you mentioned the Peter Yates character, but you don't mention how big a character he is in this film.
He's the actual lead, yeah.
Unfortunately so.
Yeah.
This would have been a great half-hour Tales from the Crypt style episode. I was going to say the Twilight Zone, but Tales from the Crypt at least could get away with more. But yeah, this guy, he's a drunk and kind of he can't keep a job. He's a newsman, and he ends up getting a job as the press agent for this zoo, and he kind of unwittingly stumbles into this whole murder mystery conspiracy, whatever you want to call it. But he's such a goofball. I mean, he's afraid of animals. He hates animals. He's awkward around people. He's trying to give a speech at a dinner that he helped orchestrate, and he's like, hey, everybody in the press, when I do this, I want you to stand up and take my picture. And he's, of course, the press isn't paying attention. So he's like, why isn't anyone taking my picture? And
oh my God, my synopsis should have been a tribute to him not knowing what to say. Well, I just spun my wheels and kept repeating Murders in the Zoo. Well, Murders in the Zoo is about some murders in a zoo. Is that what it? Because that's what his speech was. His speech was repeating the same thing over and over again.
I mean, look, here's the thing. At a certain point when I realized that he was going to be like the main dude, and not just a side character.
I agree with you. He should not be.
Right. But I tuned out. Like, there were just large stretches of this movie where I was completely checked out. But then when they would reintroduce Lionel Atwell's character and just show him being conniving and vicious and kind of desperate, I checked back in. I'm like, this is a great, you're right. This is a great horror movie. It's very suspenseful. The bit where towards the end, the doctor who has discovered that there is a difference in the snake that bit The first guy and the snake that they had in the zoo or whatever, there's a difference in diameter of the fangs. He goes to call Lionel Atwell because he's the explorer who brought these creatures back. He's like, something's wrong here. And the guy's like, you're down right, there is. And he attacks him with I love it. The weapon is a severed snake's head that he's going to go, keeps doing all throughout the movie. But he attacks the assistant who goes like, oh, I've got some anti-venom in this lab. And it reminded me of the kind of the pharmacy scene in the beginning of, not pharmacy, but the drugstore room in the beginning of Friday the 13th
Sure.
final chapter, where she's like going in there to get this syringe, and he comes in, and she's like immediately knows that something's wrong with this guy, and there's like a struggle and a chase and locked doors. It's great. And it's also great, and I don't know if this has to do with like pre-code or not, but I still don't know how the hell they did it. I'm sure there was no PETA activist disclaimer at the end of this saying no animals are harmed.
Oh, they definitely, in 1932, definitely not.
No.
Lionel Atwell, his character, opens all of the cages in this menagerie, and lions and tigers and God knows what else are like full on fighting and wrestling each other, and it's horrifying.
Yeah.
It's also horrifying that he could just stand there, and it was almost like when the Wile E. Coyote runs out over the cliff by so many feet, and it's not until he realizes that he's supposed to be falling that he falls. Like, this guy's standing there watching all this stuff go on, and the animals are completely ignoring him until they're like, oh, maybe we should chase him down a corridor. I don't know what was going on there. But yeah, this movie is half great and half trash, and I'm all here for it.
Yeah, we neither one of us discussed, like, you don't think he's gonna actually succeed in killing both his wife's lover and his wife, and he tosses her into an alligator marsh at the zoo.
That kill of her. That's the thing, is I'm watching this and I'm like, Lionel Atwell is one of the earliest, like, really sadistic, dark killers. I mean, this guy is like, we open it, he's like, yeah, you tried to kiss my wife? I'm going to sew your fucking mouth shut and shove you in the jungle. Good luck, buddy.
And tie your hands up so you can't do anything. You can't defend yourself against anything coming at you.
And just by opening it with that, he is such a he just drips villainy throughout this whole thing. And then, like, immediately on the boat, when you find out she's got another interest, and maybe the other guy he killed wasn't a true love interest, but she seems to be interested in anyone but her sadistic husband. Go figure. I love the minute he sees what's his name, Roger Hewitt, talking to his wife. He's like, you want to go downstairs for a private viewing of the animal?
Yeah. Oh, you're interested in my animals all of a sudden. It's funny. I didn't think you were interested in any of my animals before.
He's like, you want to get an up close and personal look right now?
Yeah, he was ready to do him in right there on the ship.
Right on the fucking boat. You knew it. And that's what I love, that setup about him. And let's not forget the wonderful dialogue he had with his wife back at the campfire after he sent what's his name out into the woods. She asks about Taylor. She goes, well,
yeah, he left.
It was like, he goes, oh yeah, no, I saw Taylor. And she goes, what did he say? He didn't say anything. And I'm like,
I swear to God, he was half a head turn away from like winking at the audience.
But I just loved that line, the way he said it, because I'm like you, Joe. I'm watching a 1932-33 film, and it's got that type of dialogue, that type of dialogue, and you're just like, wow, that's like, that's just a snappy villain line that you would hear today. It's like,
yeah, and Atwell is deliciously evil in this, and it's a shame that in the 40s he kind of just got relegated to just being a cop or a mad scientist, and that's it. Like, that's because in the early 30s, he played a couple mad scientists in the early 30s, but he was tremendous.
I love the Eric Gorman villain, though. I mean, and that kill of his wife where he like grabs her and he pushes her, muzzles her,
then throws her into the alligator pit,
dumps her, and it's done so like raw. Like you're just like, and not exactly perfect. She doesn't go over like cleanly either. She
No.
kind of, I'm just like, dude.
Now, did he? I rewound this and watched it a couple of times because I couldn't quite tell. It's kind of confusing. It looked almost as if he, muzzled her by shoving the snake in her face, like the little snake's head. I thought that he had like paralyzed her and then dumped her over the
It's
bridge.
possible. Maybe I didn't catch that, but it's possible he did that because I mean,
Yeah.
he definitely had it in his hand because his wife confronted him about it, so he definitely had it with him.
Oh.
But I mean, and it almost makes me wonder if they put the Peter Yates character in here because this film is, outside of him, so dark. I mean,
I had actually looked up the actor who played Peter Yates. I've only
Charles Ruggles.
I on Letterboxd with all the movies I've logged, I've only seen him in 5 movies. Every other one that I've seen him in, it was Bringing Up Baby. It Happened on Fifth Avenue. The Invisible Woman, who, while it's technically part of the Universal Monster universe, it's a comedy. No Time for Comedy with Jimmy Stewart. So everything I've seen him in besides this is all just straight up comedies. This is the only one where maybe he was there to be specifically a comedic relief because this movie does get dark. Let me see. One of these standouts in the All-Star comedy. Oh yeah, so he was a comedy guy.
Comedy. So maybe they worked him in here because of the dark material. And I'm with Ian though. I'm like, I didn't need him. This could have stayed just this dark, like serious, like, oh shit, who is Eric Gorman gonna kill next? It's like the way Atwell plays him. It's like anybody who even looks at him wrong, he's like, and he starts to squeeze the snake head. Yeah.
Or anyone who looks at his wife at all, because even when Peter Yates first meets Gorman, he says, "Oh, you should use your wife in the publicity because she's very attractive." Oh, you've met my wife? Like, dude, all right, dude, she exists. You don't have to kill every man that sees her. She's a beautiful woman. Just acknowledging it is not enough to, be like, oh, okay, so you're trying to bang my wife. You never said that. I don't need to meet the Green Mamba.
Which wasn't a Green Mamba, by the way. That whole time that was not a Green Mamba. Like the snake that he was putting into the cage that they called the Green Mamba was a python, I think, or it was one. It was not a Green Mamba because a Green Mamba does not have those markings on it.
I was like, does a Green Mamba really exist? I don't even know.
No, Green Mambas do exist. I was looking it up, pictures. Unless it's a variation, it might be a variation of the species. I just found it. But let's not forget, kind of like when we watched.
Oh, you guys had to watch that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we had fun with it. But here you have a main actor actively handling the snake multiple times in this movie with our doctor character.
I'm sure at this point we probably had like devenoming technology or something to I don't know. In the 30s, would you be able to remove the venom from a snake? I don't know. It's 100 years ago almost. Who knows?
Oh wow. No, I don't know.
Those snakes? Maybe they were still venomous too. Maybe it's just like, yo, dude, watch out.
Well, I mean, I did like the it's not the venomous snake, but the constrictor at the end.
Yes,
they did a great job, I think, of hiding Lionel Atwell. While I'm sure they had a trained, snake wrangler or whoever dealing with that scene because it was mostly shot from behind, shot from the back. Mostly full body, which I got to give credit for. And I'm sure they did something. I don't know if it was like a fake snake or whatever for the kind of the close-ups of the face at the end that Joe mentioned earlier. But yeah, it's so effective and creepy and you just you feel that kind of horror movie thing of like he runs down the corridor, slams himself into this cage to get away from the lions and the tigers, and he's so just it's almost, I think there should have been more like close-ups on his face or something, because I could just imagine it was a mixture of adrenaline from having escaped and like cockiness that like, ha, you can't get me. He was completely unaware of what he had locked himself into, which was this constrictor cage.
Which that was a huge constrictor, by the way. I know it was, the way they shot it, but still, that was a massive constrictor. I'm gonna say right now, for the age of the film, and I know we keep bringing it up, but this film is a lot of surprises, and that's why I wanted to do the series, is because I think you get this preconceived notion of black and white films going, oh, they didn't do this, and you find out, oh yeah, they did. I'm going to come right out and admit that you see this constrictor come up to his leg and starts turning around him a bit. I was like, oh, okay. Then you see it open its mouth, and that first like dart, I know it was against fake legs, but still that first dart of the mouth as it shoots out to bite his leg was so like vicious. I was actually like, I felt that in my leg, because it was like, damn.
Yeah. And it was a nice surprise too, because the other snake attacks we see in the movie is just, getting bit, and then you scream, and then you tense up and you fall over. I registered that it was probably a boa constrictor in that cage with him, but I wasn't expecting to do the whole like full body wraparound. I thought he was just going to freeze up and fall down, and then the snake would, eat him or do something. But yeah, that was really horrifying. The one big surprise to me is I think this is the first movie I've seen with Randolph Scott in it. So
Randolph Scott.
Yeah. So I've been
film of his you've seen? I mean, this is the first time you've seen any movie with him
that I'm aware of. I mean, it helps that they list all of the cast in the opening of the movie. So yeah, it was like the answer to a 4 decades old running gag from when my parents showed me Blazing Saddles when I was really young. That was, a running movie in our family. I finally understand that joke.
You do it for Randolph Scott. Scott.
I'd do it for Randolph Scott. That guy was awesome.
He was awesome. I liked the Jack Woodward character in here quite a bit. I like the dynamic. It was like you get this huge dark film, and you're like, okay, it's actually kind of bucking a few cliches until we get to his assistant and him, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, there it is. There's the the relationship between the doctor and the assistant.
Yeah.
But it was good. I liked both characters. I liked the nurse character. She was awesome in here. And yeah, even the wife was like, I love the fact she didn't trust her husband. She knew what kind of guy he was.
I mean, hyper jealous, dude. Like you joke about it, like, dude, if you can't handle being married to someone that hot, then don't marry someone that hot. You're gonna suspect every man that looks at her of being, having ulterior motives, bro. You're gonna live a very unhappy life.
Well, but I mean, on the other hand,
she does give him reason to.
Right. Gorman is clearly the villain, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to keep, his woman, all to himself. But you wonder how much of this was two people. I'd like to see their backstory and why they even got together, because there's no love between them by the time we see them in, whatever state their marriage is in. But like to your point, Joe, she's getting her share of stuff on the side, and she apparently is very careless with not hiding it well enough. So maybe she doesn't know what her husband's capable of. She knows he's jealous, but is it like, murderous jealousy? I don't know. That I would rather have seen that than anything past the first 2 minutes we spend with our zoo publicist.
I mean, she does suspect him very, very quickly. Like, this movie's only 62 minutes long, so we don't got time to meander here. So she's got to get right into, oh, yeah, my husband's doing this. Immediately, first guy dead, my husband killed him.
Yeah. She wasn't quite sure about Bob Taylor, but then when But when Hewitt drops dead right next to her, she's like, "Oh yeah, no, that was my husband." Especially the way how he's all outraged. Oh, how dare you keep these exotic animals loose?
Well before
Or
that,
even well
she
before,
told
yeah.
she told Hewitt on the ship that she
That's true.
suspected that her husband had killed the other guy. So she must have known. I mean, I don't know. What do you do at that point? But I mean, also, yeah, she's got two lovers on that ship that we know of, because it wasn't he was trying to kiss his wife. He succeeded in kissing Gorman's wife, and then the other guy is flat out having an affair with her that they're talking about. So there's no ambiguity. She's banging around on that ship with everybody but her husband, and he's not happy about it.
Right, and that's the other weird thing is, like, if she knows or heavily suspects that her husband killed somebody while
Or is capable of it.
Right, then I know she was a little bit squirrely, but she was way too, like, lovey-dovey. Oh, this is gonna be such a romantic escape, when she's making plans to leave her husband with that guy in the hotel. Like, both of them should have been scared shitless and meeting, frankly, anywhere but that hotel where the husband knows where they both are. Again, you get rid of Yates and you make this into a psycho type drama of, like, that hotel.
Flesh out what's going on between the Gormans a little bit, and get rid of the the comic relief. But like Mark said, it's possible the comic relief was there to kind of lighten the load on this movie, because how would a 1932 audience have reacted to this movie with no levity? I
thought it was pretty funny when Gorman dies at the end. I mean, that sends him out in the street with a laugh. Like, you idiot.
But what I liked about Evelyn Gorman was when she did fully suspect her husband of killing Roger Hewitt, is like, she's like, "Oh, I'm going to bed." And he's like, "Okay, good night, honey." And she goes into her bedroom, locks the door. Then she goes to the window. She goes and she looks through the window to watch him hide the snake head that he had in the, she suspected him. I didn't expect that little angle of it. I thought maybe she would try to pack her bags, but she actually looks around to see, oh, hey, I'm going to see if he's going to, pull out his evidence or whatnot. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then she goes and grabs it, and she makes the smart move of not to go back to her bedroom. She grabs it and leaves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's watching her leave.
What?
And he's also watching her through the window. Wait, or am I getting it confused with another scene later in the movie?
That's later in the movie.
Yeah, that's later in the movie.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, like, even if you take out the Yates stuff, there's so much going on in this movie with this story and these characters. It's hard to believe that it's only just over an hour long.
Yeah.
I mean, you got movies that are twice as long as this today that aren't half as interesting. And, you'd never be able to make Murders in the Zoo nowadays unless it was all like CG animals or something like this. But I love the idea behind the story.
Well, it'll be in public domain soon, so this could be another one that somebody could just run with it and try to do something interesting with it. I mean, probably do it without a lot of money. Probably wasn't a lot of money on this movie.
No, it really wasn't. If you look at it, I mean, the sets are pretty basic, and I'm almost suspecting they reused a couple sets, for multi-purpose.
Oh, almost sure.
But it obviously it doesn't have a huge amount of locations or anything. I mean, jungle, okay, it's the back lot woods area is the jungle. You know what I mean?
Paramount's got 100 of those.
Jungle. But
going back to speaking of the jungle, that guy who had his mouth sewn up, I was noticing that it wasn't just a simple like job of like, oh, his lips are sewn together. Like his face was all fucked up. Like it looked like he'd been beaten up or run through the ringer, and then had the indignity of his mouth sewn up, and there was like swelling in different pockets of it because they weren't doing the most careful job with it, I assume. Yeah. So it was really gruesome, and I was not expecting that moment either.
Right at the beginning of the movie too. Like this is a minute in. So
and that sewed mouth looked good. I'm like sitting here, I'm like, the makeup effect artist, whoever it was, damn, because I'm like, Okay, the mouth. I believe that mouth is shut. And you're right. It's not like a clean cut or anything. It's all zigzagged here as well. And I loved how Gorman was telling the story. Well, this method of sewing was taught to me by so and so.
It's so innocuous at first because you don't realize what he's sewing.
Right. Yeah.
Looking on IMDb now to see who did do the effects for this, because
because in general they looked good. I mean the effects, I mean the animal stuff. Yeah, that was I was like, that kind of made my jaw drop when they released all the animals, and you've got the footage, which obviously the cameraman was high up on a left when he was shooting it, but watching the animals go at each other, I'm like, oh shit. And that was my thought too. I was like, I wonder if PETA was PETA wasn't exactly here.
No, I don't think PETA existed yet.
No Humane Society was on site to make sure no animals were harmed.
Oh, there was a Humane Society on there. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think there was, but there should.
Oh, you said no. Okay, no Humane Society. Okay. I cannot find anything on the effects here. It's not on IMDb, at least.
Huh. But
could this movie have been the genesis of PETA and or the Humane Society?
I think Cannibal Holocaust is attributed to that one quite a bit.
I'd be shocked if there were no others before that. I'm assuming some of those sword and sandal movies with their treatment of horses, probably.
Oh yeah, no horses. Yeah, horses were they would trip line horses in like old westerns, and that they trip lined them and such. And yeah, back in the day, yeah, the practices of the animals are quite evident in Sue with that scene once he releases all the animals, which again, your standard thematic foreshadowing. They're doing this wonderful soiree amongst the animals, which was Yates's idea, to do this dinner with all these rich folks, and all the photographer guys are there, and all of a sudden the gates start lifting up a little, and because the photographer guy's holding on to the lever, and he's like, "Don't pull that, you'll let them all out." And I'm like, oh, we're gonna see that later.
That's true. It's foreshadowing. Apparently, yeah, there was a one puma died on set.
Oh,
well, the cats got engaged in a fight on set. 17 of the cats got engaged in a fight, which led to the death of a puma. The interesting thing I'm reading here: to promote the film, Paramount invited the press and some of their stars, including Marlene Dietrich, Gary Cooper, Miriam Hopkins, Cary Grant, Francis D., and the Marx Brothers to a luncheon to view the shooting of the wild beasts for the finale of the film. So they were on set for that. Marlene Dietrich, the Marx Brothers, Cary Grant.
For the animal release?
They were there for the animal release. Unless I'm misreading this. To promote the film, Paramount invited the press and some of their stars to a luncheon and view the shooting of the wild beasts for the finale of the film.
Wow.
Where's that behind the scenes footage? I would be a fly on the wall.
I want to see those looks on those faces.
As for censorship, William Wright sent the censors the final script for the film Murders in the Zoo on December 28th, despite the film being set to start filming the day beforehand. Censors objected. Censors objected to scenes of where a character proclaims "Good God," and where a character kicks his wife's hand loose to drop her into the pond. So,
wow. Yeah.
So apparently she must have been holding on, and Lionel Atwell kicks the hand.
That's why that scene looks just a little bit awkward. They must have just trimmed that because after he tosses her over, there's like her body's in kind of a weird position, but now it explains it. If she was holding on and he kicked her hand, but they snipped it in the copy that I saw, that would explain why it looks a little awkward when she goes
it looks a little jumpy.
Everything else he does to her in that scene, in that moment, they decide,
the kicking of the hand is too
far.
Yeah. The final film script is dated January 4th, 1933, and production began on January 5th, 1933. So the script was literally finished the day before they started shooting. That's something. That's that old Hollywood stuff, man. That doesn't. That's amazing now.
Oh, I see another bit. On its initial release, the film was banned in Germany, Sweden, Latvia, and Quebec, Canada. It could only be released with cuts in United Kingdom, Australia, New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Ontario. So this thing got hit.
So is there anything that we're missing then, aside from the scene, from any releases?
Makes you wonder what might have been trimmed.
Oh, man, now I'm going to have to. You'd think watching this movie for so long. Yeah, so...
Well, I mean, like you mentioned the puma dying. There's got to be footage of those animals like ripping each other apart, because that's the thing that struck me is I kept waiting for blood or something, because you see a lot of them wrestling, but you got to assume these beasts have claws and teeth and they're not very friendly with each other. So I wonder how much of that was cut out and they just showed the bits that they could.
They might have. You get the one where the male lion is going at it with a cheetah, and it looks like that one of them's going to get a jugular bit. I'm like, I'm watching it. And again, I'm watching this still going, holy shit, that's not like CGI. Those animals are trying to just eat the snot. It's like, oh my God. And the Yates scenes had to have been in there to try to, lighten things up, because then you get the scene too later on where they've closed the zoo because they can't track down the green mamba. I love this. It's been closed for like 3 weeks. 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks. And these boys want to get into the zoo, so they figure out a way to get into the zoo, and they're the ones that fish out the piece of dress from
the dress. Yeah, they wouldn't have found her maybe if the little boys weren't there.
Well, especially because like in the next scene they talk about, we found other pieces of fabric like floating on the water. I'm like, how did you not see this?
Well, they only had the one guard. He was kind of old, so
Sure.
All their manpower went to looking for the green mamba. They could not. Like, sir, there's a skeletal hand sticking out of the pond. I'm sure it's nothing.
It's been there for years. Yeah, it's a prop. It's a prop.
That was the first guy to look at Gorman's wife.
Oh, you didn't know, bro? Yeah, do not look at his wife. His wife comes over and says, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Gorman."
Yeah, she wonders why everybody goes, "Hi, Mrs. Gorman."
So, all right. In real life, Lionel Atwell was a bit more of a player.
Yeah.
There's a distinct noticeable drop in how many movies he's getting after 1941, because Lionel had a beachfront property in Hollywood. And as you like to do when you have beachfront properties in Hollywood in the 30s and 40s, you tend to host orgies in them. So one of these orgies apparently took place on either Christmas Eve or Christmas Day.
Well, because that's when you would have.
That's when you would have an orgy. But on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day of 1941, he had one of these huge orgies, and Lionel Atwell would basically show a bunch of stag films, like the kind of shit you'd see on like Something Weird Video now, where there's like no names or anything. It's just women stripping and people having sex and pawing at each other silently with no sound. And apparently, what's that?
Sounds expensive. So.
So apparently one of these girls might have been underage. 16, I think, was what I read. I could probably look it up real quick. And that's what apparently basically ended his career was I don't know how well known it was that he was hosting these orgies, but apparently, there was a whistleblower who said that at the Christmas one of the women was underage.
And the cop's like, okay, was that Christmas Eve or was that Christmas Day?
Well, that's me. It's probably in the official record.
I need to know which orgy during the holidays it was. Okay.
But I mean, it's successful enough to leave it out of the papers, I think, because I don't.
Well, yeah.
Unless you're somebody who's like digging deep into this stuff and you're wondering, hey, how come Lionel Atwell went from like having like major starring roles, having these very tiny bit parts? And I think that's why.
Which is interesting, because according to Ibidem, at the premiere of Murders in the Zoo, he was 48, and that was in 33. So if you're talking 41,
he was in his late 50s, and hey, aside from aside from the fact that one of the people was underage, other than that, you do you, bro. You can get a bunch of people to build your house for
you.
Yeah,
you do you.
Well, another bit of trivia is the girl, she came forward, she was a whistleblower, and Lionel Atwell's nickname at the orgies was the Whistle. Sorry.
No.
Just made that up.
But it could have been. You never know.
And I totally fell for that. I walked right into that.
And so did she, apparently.
No.
That was only at the Flag Day orgy. So,
So it makes me wonder how long he was having orgies at his beachside mansion. That apparently he got in trouble because one time he had a 16-year-old there. So
no. To be clear, that was the one time that he got caught.
Right? Yeah. To be fair, we don't know because nobody else was talking.
Depending on their vetting process, someone may have. Who knows? But and this is why I know many people didn't like it, but I really enjoyed the film Babylon because it was like the dark, seedy side of Singing in the Rain. But Babylon shows the darker side of the 30s cinema.
And going back into the 20s, because that's what ended the or damaged the career of Fatty Arbuckle.
Mm-hmm.
Was those kinds of things. So you go way back on those.
I still have not seen. I still have to catch up with Babylon.
I haven't seen Babylon yet either. I haven't seen Babylon. I haven't seen the Fablemans, and Poor Things is sitting right there. Both are looking at me like, Joe, you wanted to see us so bad. But you want to see Babylon though.
If you do watch the Fablemans, then I suggest you watch Patrick Reed Johnson's 525-77. It's really good.
Was it the Jaws?
No, that's the actual Patrick Reed Johnson, who directed Spaced Invaders and a number of other films. It was his passion project. It's his story, kind of a Fableman's type story of him being the first. He's considered fan zero of Star Wars because he was the very first person. He was the very first person to ever, from outside of what would be ILM, to be able to see the Star Wars special effects and the first rough cut and some of the and it's about his life as a kid trying to make movies in that. And I haven't seen Fablemans yet, but this film was solid. It was like I'm like, wow, this is actually really good.
We'll take it back to the fact that you haven't seen the Fablemans yet. I thought you had seen it by now.
No, it was one that didn't quite interest me. I'd probably watch Murders in the Zoo again before I watch Fablemans, but I'll watch
3 times before you watch the Fablemans again. Yeah, that's 3 hours long.
Yeah, it's 3 hours. Oof. Yeah, I could watch a whole trilogy of Murders in the.
Murders in the Rue Morgue is only like 65 minutes too, so we're gonna have a breeze this month. There's some of these movies really quick. I think that's next month or next week, isn't it?
Yeah, week after next. I put a space in there between.
The other one's not that long either.
No, most of them are shorter films. These films were shorter because, they were just film still was expensive back then, and their films were just shorter. In general, you didn't get too many epic long 4-hour films. Yeah,
these were also programmed for you to sit in a theater all day and watch several programs too. Right. So that's why something that's like a 60-minute movie is like the second feature, the B feature.
Right. This definitely would have been a B feature. I mean, considering content and everything, this would have definitely been a B feature.
I wonder what it would have been in support of, if I could even find that. I probably could not find that.
But still, it's an interesting movie. I dug most of it. I didn't need to. I'm like with you, Ian. I didn't need the comedic relief because I think it takes away from the overall foreboding, dark, and just grittiness, brutality of this film. It's if you didn't have him in there, this would be one of those where you're like, holy wow.
Yeah. It's disappointing, and but there's not. Who's to say someone couldn't make a fan edit where they cut around that character,
just cut around that
focus on the
character.
Gorman.
You could do it. I mean, only keep him in the scenes where he's absolutely necessary.
Yeah,
right.
You could keep him in the scene of him maybe getting an initial job, and then the banquet. Like, just cut to the banquet.
Yeah, and you don't even have to have the speech. You can just cut to where they're sitting down at dinner, and the guy gets bit or whatever.
Yeah.
You could totally do that.
Is it official that nobody likes the Peter Yates character? Because nobody in this movie seems to either. His old boss is even like, just tell me we can get rid of him.
I love that when the zoo guy, which I feel, if there's one character you're going to feel sympathy for in this whole thing, it's going to be the poor zoo director who just wants his zoo to run. And so, he hires Yates. He calls him for a reference. And I loved that conversation, too, because he calls the boss and he goes, "So I'm thinking of hiring Yates. What kind of guy is he?" And initially his former boss said, "Oh, he's an all right guy." And then there's a pause and he goes, "Okay, what's he really like?" And then she goes, "Well, he does manage to drink occasionally." But I just love that pause, like, "Oh yeah, no, he's a good guy." And then he's like, "Yeah, what's he really like?" you're just fibbing.
Somebody commented on my Facebook post about this movie. Brian Page, if you are watching it, killer pre-code horror marred only by Charlie Ruggles, peak Atwell though. So yes.
We're all in agreement. It's official.
We're all in agreement. just read your comment.
Nice.
Yeah, the only fascination I had with Ruggles was at certain angles he kind of looked like Bryan Cranston. Like, oh, that'd be interesting if he was in this movie and was playing a serious part. That could be fun.
He reminded me a bit like Red Buttons almost, or it
was in black and white, Mark. How could you tell? All right.
But I need to get a new soundboard where I can do sound effect buttons that I could just.
You probably download one for free.
Oh yeah, no, I can. I just need one of those quick hot buttons. But so yeah, it's not that long of a movie. Our podcast today will probably be going almost as long. But Murders at the Zoo is an interesting film. If you can look past the comedic relief, there's a fun, dark movie in here.
Yeah, it is a nice, dark little pre-code movie. Really, really, and yeah, like Brian said, peak Lionel Atwell, because I mean, what he's probably most famous for is Krog and Son of Frankenstein, where he's lost the arm, so he's moving his arm around. That's probably his most famous role at this point. But he was kind of a big star in the early 30s. Like right before this, he did The Devil is a Woman with Marlene Dietrich. So he's Mystery of the Wax Museum was shortly before this. He was kind of like a big horror star outside of Universal. Karloff and Lugosi are definitely bigger than him, but he's got Mystery of the Wax Museum, The Vampire Bat. He was Dr. X in the Warner Brothers film Dr. X. So he had quite a bit of a career as a horror star himself. And then in the late 30s, he went into Universal and he started playing kind of more supporting characters. Mm-hmm. He's Krog in Son of Frankenstein. He's he's Dr. Frankenstein's assistant in Ghost of Frankenstein. He's the one that ends up actually taking Igor's head and putting it in the monster. He's another cop in House of Frankenstein. He's a cop again in House of Dracula. And then he's a mad scientist in The Mad Doctor of Market Street, The Strange Case of Dr. RX, The Mad Ghoul. He's in all these movies. I'm like, sorry, I'm a fucking nerd.
No, I love that you come on this show because the warehouse of knowledge that you have, there's only one other person on the show that I think would, and I think you did a show with him once. If not, I've got to get you and Scotty D together
Don't know, so maybe you should get us
Scott
together.
Davis, I gotta try to get, when Scott's ready to start doing podcasts again, I gotta get you two on, and I'm not gonna say a thing, and I'm just gonna let you two just.
Is it gonna be like when we first met in Milwaukee, and your wife's just like, I'm gonna leave you two alone and go do something else?
Yeah, then she ended up talking to Lloyd, and then asking Lloyd a question about Shakespeare. They got a serious response back, which she didn't expect, and they ended up having a conversation about Shakespeare shitstorm and his take on one of the Shakespeare characters.
That's the thing.
Beautiful.
People don't expect that from Lloyd. They think the guy who directed the Toxic Avenger is just going to be like, duh. He's a Yale-educated man who loves Shakespeare and has a vast history of film knowledge. So yeah,
it was wonderful to see her go. Yeah, I had a conversation with him, and I'm talking about a character where just the scene before I was talking about, everybody got shit on by a big whale. Have
you ever seen the clip of Kenneth Branagh reading about Romeo and Juliet?
No.
It's fantastic because he's reading it and he's getting such a kick out of it.
I have to look that up.
It's I know it exists. It's somewhere. I've seen it. It's probably on YouTube somewhere.
So, final thought with Murders in the Zoo. Ian, would you still suggest people watch it, even though we do have the Yates guy in there?
Oh, definitely. And I think this and the entire series, going back years, where we're talking about older films, it deserves almost its own show or its own investigation, because the more we get into these things, the more we discover like this dark, sophisticated horror from almost 100 years ago, the more I wonder, where the hell do these pop cultural myths come from of all old black and white movies are cheesy and stupid and nothing cool ever happens in them? Because I'm finding it's the opposite. Maybe those movies exist, but I'm starting to wonder if they were like 0.1% of the entire content, because I'm constantly amazed by how edgy this stuff is, going back almost a century compared to even things we have going on right now.
Well, I think when people think of older movies, like these movies even didn't even really get TV time, aside from like, your King Kongs and things like that. Like, you're not going to see Murders in the Zoo or Safe in Hell on TV.
Right.
And I think that's why. I think when people think of these boring melodramas, they think of like the random public domain movies that would end up on PBS and end up on late night TV, because outside of like, because people don't talk about Casablanca like it's one of these like terrible movies. When people talk about these terrible movies, I feel like what they're talking about are like these creaky melodramas that nobody owned at any point, and they just were ubiquitous on
indie channels and that.
Yeah, whatever. Like they would just be on like public access and stuff. Movies like this, you don't see them because Universal never really promoted it and put it on TV. It's odd Universal owning it, though it's a Paramount movie. So I think that's Warner Brothers. I've never seen Safe in Hell on Turner Classic Movies. I learned about it going through William Wellman's filmography, reading about it, then going on Amazon and going, oh, the DVD-R is $10. It never got like a big release. It's not celebrated like Casablanca or like Dr. Zhivago, or I don't know why I threw Dr. Zhivago in there. That's 30 years later, but it's not, it's not celebrated. I think that's why. I mean, even the Marx Brothers, like you show somebody a Marx Brothers movie, the ones from the 30s were fantastic.
Well, I guess, and that's why this might be a separate and probably bigger discussion, is these movies that sort of ruin the reputation of an entire era of filmmaking. Do people even know what those movies are anymore?
Not really.
Yeah, these like obscure melodramas that were, cheap enough to put on TV, perhaps colored an entire few generations' idea of what that era meant, wrongly so. Whereas the things that we're talking about now are just as obscure, but deserve greater acclaim. Like, in a way, I'm almost relieved, because it gives us something to discover and to talk about. But also, it's just kind of disheartening, because now we're at the point where people are like, I don't want to watch anything before the year 2000, much like something from the 30s. Whereas if you came up with a list of like 5 movies that we've talked about in the show, put them in front of someone who's at least open to discovering new movies, you could blow people's minds left and right.
Yeah, definitely. I think King Kong, Safe in Hell, Murders in the Zoo, although I know you guys weren't big fans of it. What else? I think those would actually like open people up.
Scarface.
Scarface.
I was just
How
thinking
did you get
Scarface,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Scarface.
even ones we didn't cover here, but Little Caesar, The Public Enemy,
M. We could you throw
Yeah.
M out. The original 30.
The Criminal Code, movies like that. I think if people watch them now, I think they would be like, "Oh my God, this is not anything I expected." You know, and I think that's accurate.
Yeah. There's actually not a huge difference. Actually, some of these and many of these, as we've mentioned, that we looked at from the 30s are even better written than a good chunk of the mass media produced stuff we're getting today. But even still, the way the story is told, the types of stories hasn't really changed in almost 100 years. We still, they were doing stories like this back then. But I think it's what you were saying. I think part of it is they weren't publicized as much, but also for this exact reason why we're doing pre-code films is you had the Hays codes in there run so long.
Exactly.
Some of those films get cut up and their original versions are lost. Like when we talked about Putting on the Ritz, how there was 20 minutes of that film for some reason gone
forever now. And I think it's also because of the Hays Code. Even in the advent of television, they really couldn't promote these movies and throw them on TV. Like,
right.
You'll get like stuff for the shock theater package. You'll get like some bizarre, boring 40s movie that didn't really have much going on. Presented by Ghoulardi or whoever your horror host was. Whereas these movies, a lot of the times, you couldn't show because how are you going to show this? If the Hays Code doesn't allow half the stuff going on here, we're talking here. There's an extramarital affair that one of the characters is having with two men on a cruise ship. 1932. You got a guy with his mouth sewn shut and tied up and basically left for dead in the very first scene of the movie. You got Lionel Atwell getting his skull crushed by a boa constrictor in the final scene. Actually, the final scene is Peter Yates smacking a lion and walking away from him. Actually, yeah.
You're right. The first
right
time,
before
Joe.
that.
The final scene of the movie is that last bit.
Yeah, you weren't going to show this on TV in the 60s, so there isn't like this great clamoring for it.
Yeah, it is unfortunate because it's even though we didn't care, I didn't care for part of it. It was still a worthy watch, and it's a breeze hour and 8 minutes. So even those parts that you don't like don't last long because then you get the hour.
Not even hour and 8, hour and 2.
Then you get back to Lionel Atwell doing some really cool evil shit.
And this might be one of those strange occurrences that you have all these horror hosts who are all showing these public domain movies, and we're friends with a few of them in the Wisconsin area. Who's to say 5, 6, 7 years from now when this movie hits the public domain, there isn't an entire new generation that's now discovering this movie because now anybody can show it at any time.
There's maybe a number of those movies now. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see in probably the next 5 years, as films like this do go to PD, what comes to light.
This year was 1928, I think. So
you got a few years.
So you got a couple years.
Maybe for my 55th birthday, we'll do horror hosting.
I'll bring all my DVDs of all my movies that are going into public domain to Hex and Arcane, rip them all, and
here we go. Yeah, let's just
start showing these movies.
They're
all in public domain now.
Absolutely, and Joe, I know you'll probably still recommend Murders in the Zoo. Your final thought with that?
Yeah, I would absolutely recommend it. Like I said, when I first saw it, the opening scene, the alligator scene, and the death of Lionel Atwell just ingrained themselves in my brain, my 15 or 16-year-old brain, and like it stood out because I was seeking out these old movies and I had never seen anything like this. And this is, right around the time I also discovered Scarface and stuff like that. But I think this was the first one because this one was on TV late at night. So I set my VCR. So I was like, okay, let's watch this.
Nice. That's nice that you got to see it on, or at least record it on TV. So
As much as I hate to compare myself to this character, if you've seen Fade to Black, I was kind of like the Dennis Christopher character. I was like laying in my bedroom with the TV guide going, oh, yeah, let me set the VCR for that one. Set the VCR for that one.
hey, don't knock the recording of the VCR. I read the article about the one woman who had recorded like decades of TV on VHS, and they are actively with the Internet Archive taking those and ripping those because she captured so much that has been lost, like old commercials, news programs, everything. She just wanted to record, and she just apparently her whole life revolved around recording. They would literally cut like dinner short or whatnot so she could go send someone to swap tapes. So she had archived on VHS literal decades of TV broadcasts and such, and Internet Archive has been archiving them, I guess, for a while now, because digitizing them, because there's stuff on there people are like, holy shit. It's like, old commercials and that you never have seen by now, and it's like, wow.
I thought I was extreme because I'd call my mom from the payphone at the high school, be like, hey, can you go into my bedroom and change the channel to 63 so I can take this Vincent Price movie? No, but do it in 5 minutes because this Sherlock Holmes movie is still running and I don't want to miss the end.
That's beautiful. She was your DVR. Nice.
Hey, tapes on EP, man. You can record 6 hours.
Tapes on EP, absolutely.
There's a Basil Rathbone movie at 10 o'clock and a Vincent Price movie at 12:45, and then cool. I can catch Hammer House of Horror on the Sci-Fi Channel.
There you go. You just set all 3 dates. Yeah.
Just set it to record. Just have my mom change the channel in between. That poor woman. This is what I put her through.
It's beautiful. Well, now, as always, this is an actual pre-code film. So we get to spin the wheel of random. We have 5 pre-code films left in our special series. So we have Blonde Venus, Redheaded Woman, Night Nurse, Maniac, and The Little Giant. So
2 of these I haven't seen.
So let's spin the wheel of random and see where it lands. And we get Redheaded Woman.
One I've never seen. I will.
1932 Redheaded Woman. Let me pull that up quick.
Guess Betty Davis?
Huh?
I was like, we guess Betty Davis?
Redheaded Woman, Jean Harlow.
Oh!
You were so close.
And we get Chester Morris back. We saw him in Alibi.
So Redheaded Woman from 1932, the synopsis, to give you folks all a little bit of a tease of what it is. Lillian, Jean Harlow, relentlessly attempts to seduce a married man, played by Chester Morris. That is the synopsis. Oh, here's a little bit longer one. Lil, played by Jean Harlow, works for the Legendaire Company and causes Bill, Chester Morris, to divorce Irene and marry her. She has an affair with a businessman. Yeah. So this is all about the evils of a redheaded woman. Apparently she is a homewrecker, according to what this is saying here.
It is on the Forbidden Hollywood Collection, Volume 1.
Oh, there you go.
Alongside Babyface, 2 versions of Babyface, and James Whale's Waterloo Bridge. All right.
So, Redheaded Woman. Yeah, I don't know why I picked these films the way they did.
If it's on the very first release, the very first Forbidden Hollywood DVD, then it must be notorious for something. So.
Right. Well, I knew I picked that, but I picked a few others to go along with that when I was putting this together. Oh, yeah, it was the women running around. So I don't know the name of what I'll tell this yet, but we also have, so for the month coming up, we're going to have Redheaded Woman, The Damned Don't Cry, The Lonely Lady from 1983, and I don't know how I connected this. I'll have to look at it again. Showgirls.
Yes, I get to rewatch Showgirls. Okay, was it Damn Don't Cry? What was the second one?
The other one is The Lonely Lady from 1983.
Sorry, knocked a bunch of stuff over getting up.
No worries. So The Lonely Lady, that stars Pia Zadora, and that stars a woman hoping to achieve success in Hollywood. Aspiring screenwriter allows to exploit her. She goes through an affair and attempt her own screenplay to produce. So yeah, this is women having affairs to further their careers, apparently, is the theme. I don't know what I'm going to call this without getting canceled, so I don't know. We'll have to see.
Directed by Peter Sasdy, the great Hammer Films director. So that'll be cool.
Yeah. So I found that one, and there's Showgirls as well.
Just call it, Mark. Just call it Women on Top. There you go.
Women on Top. Oh, we won't get any emails about that one.
Oh,
It's a message of empowerment. That's all it is.
There we go. So those are the 4 films. I don't know if I'll have a name for next month, but we'll figure it out. But those are the 4 films we'll be covering next month. In August will be Redheaded Woman, 1933, The Dame Don't Cry, The Lonely Lady, and Showgirls. And I think I put Showgirls in there just because I needed to revisit Showgirls, because I know so many people that like just really adore that movie, and I disliked it completely when I watched it. So there was only one reason I watched it, and we'll get into it next month.
If
So
I pin the pasties on the stripper poster over here from the DVD release, would that be allowed? We might not be able to actually. There might be actually movie on that.
I don't know. There was a box set though that they sold, a special box set of Showgirls that came with pasties.
Yeah, it's over there.
You got it. Okay, so Joe's going to be on that episode for sure. We'll see what happens.
Well, no, when Joe said that he knocked a bunch of stuff over getting up, that reminded me of the first time I saw Showgirls. Anyway.
And on that note, I think until next time, folks, we're just going to say goodnight, everyone.
I just had a cramp.